in the comment or in the chat for me, and I will answer them as best I can. So this week we're going to continue at, this week we're going to continue our exploration of color theory, and we're going to be working with secondary colors. Now, if you were with me last week, you remember we mixed up our primary colors, our red, our blue, and our yellow. And those are colors direct from the manufacturer, so they are the primary colors that the manufacturer sells. Today, we're going to do some secondary colors. We're going to take those primary colors that we mixed last week and mix them into secondary colors. But we're also going to take some pre-mixed dyes from the manufacturer, two of them which they sell as secondary colors, the orange and the violet. And the green, they don't sell it as a secondary color, but I chose it because to me it comes the closest to being a secondary green. So we're also going to mix up, or actually I pre-mix those secondary colors from the manufacturer, but we're going to take the colors that we mixed up last week and mix them into secondary colors. And we're going to dye 6 pieces of fabric today instead of 3. We're going to dye 3 pieces with the pre-mixed colors from the manufacturer and 3 pieces that we mix the colors so that we can compare them. But before we get started with that, I want to show you the results from last week's dyeing session. Now, if you're here, go ahead and let me know in the chat. Let me know you're here and let me know where you're from, okay? So I'm going to switch to this overhead camera, and then we're going to take a look at the pieces we dyed last week, and we are going to analyze them and break them down a little bit. So this is the yellow that we dyed last week, and this is from our sun yellow color. And here's the color in the dye. And this is a pre-mixed color from the manufacturer. So we folded our fabric into a accordion square, accordion both ways, both horizontal and vertically. And here you can see the lines of our square. And this is the piece that we used to clamp it with. And this is just an oddball tile that I found at Habitat Restore. And you can see the white area is where the tile was placed. So by placing it in the middle like this, I get a repeating stripe, either vertically or horizontally, depending on which way you turn the fabric. So the nice thing about Itajime is you get these repeating patterns all over your fabric, and that's what I really like about the process. So just a single tile, or 2, one on top and one on the bottom, gives me a repeating stripe pattern by placing it in the middle. So that's our yellow piece. I'm going to set that one aside and I'll bring out the blue. So this is the blue piece that we dyed last week. And this is our color that we used, was called Mixing Blue. And this is what they sell as their primary blue. The company that I get my dyes from is called Pro Chemical and Dye, and they're on the East Coast. There's a company on the West Coast called Dharma Trading Company that also sells these dyes. So the piece that we used for this was this really odd piece that I cut off of a plastic cutting mat from the Dollar Tree, and I placed that on a diagonal. You can see that I had some bleeding. It actually goes like that. So I didn't get a full resist on some of these areas. This one's a little bit better. And I was hoping this would give a more interesting shape, but it doesn't really do anything for me. So you never really know. But it does create the same repeating pattern, but this time almost in a 4-square design. So this one, and then you got the mirror image, and this one, mirror image. So that's another design that we can get from the Itajime square fold by placing a different shape and placing it on the angle. So let me show you the final one, the red one. And this one gave us another stripe pattern, and I was a little surprised with this. You can see the square shape that it was folded in, And this is how the triangle was placed. So I used a triangle shape of a square, of a tile, and placed it like this. And since the tile didn't cover the entire piece, there's this portion down here at the bottom where nothing was covering, and I get this double solid stripe look. So in effect on this one, I get three patterns. I get this stripe, and if the fabric was whiter, there would be another stripe here and another stripe there. I get the solid red areas that receive the dye in the form of a diamond shape. And then I get the white triangle for the areas that didn't receive any dye. So that's how we're going there. And I don't know, it looks like, okay, hopefully not. It looks like my YouTube thing is frozen. But hopefully not. Every week I think I have my problem solved, but I don't. Yeah, it looks like YouTube is frozen. Let me go over here for a minute. Too bad you can't pause this. Why is YouTube frozen? Okay, I just did something and hopefully I didn't mess things up. I really wish I didn't have problems like this. Okay, well, it's back, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if I lose any of the stream here. So what I want to do next is I want to show you the colors we're going to be working with today. So today we're going to be working with, why is that a problem? Okay. We're going to be working with our violet, our orange, and our green. And these are colors that are pre-mixed from the manufacturer. And I already mixed them up using the ratio of 1 teaspoon of dye to 1 cup of water. I only mixed up a half a portion though, so half a teaspoon of dye to half a cup of water. And these are mixed up just like we would any other dye. So I'm going to set those aside and bring over my table or my tray here. Let me go back. Okay. Well, for a minute there, it looked like it was frozen again, but well, I guess it's doing what it wants to do on its own. I don't seem to have much control over it right now. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to take the dyes from last week, which is our sun yellow, our mixing blue, and then our red that we made up of strongest red and mixing red. And I'm going to mix those into an orange, a green, and a violet. I'm going to start off with the orange. And when working with yellow and red together, red is 3 times stronger than yellow. So you need to use 3 times as much yellow as you do red to get more even color, more balanced color. So I'm going to mix 6 tablespoons of yellow. Hopefully I have 6 tablespoons here. And 2 tablespoons of red into this container to make our orange. And since these are already mixed into liquid formulation, I don't have to wear my mask, but I will put on my gloves. Okay, we're just going to continue on. It looks like I'm frozen, but it's like YouTube is doing what it wants to do. So I'm going to shake this up, and I'm going to mix 6 tablespoons, or we'll see, 4 to 6. That's 1, 2. Okay, that's 3. Looks like I'll have enough to do. I think I'll do 6. 4, 5, 6. Looks like I'll just barely have enough to get 2 tablespoons of the red in here. So now I'm going to mix in 2 tablespoons of red. And I'm not cleaning my spoon because a little bit of extra yellow won't hurt. 1, 2. Okay, so this is going to be our orange. I'll put that off to the side. Oops, maybe I shouldn't have used all my yellow. I'm going to need some for green. Might have to mix more yellow. We'll see. So I don't think I have 6 tablespoons left. Okay, let's see what we got. I may have some yellow already mixed up. 1, 2, almost 3. Let me go find some more yellow. Okay, luckily I had some more yellow mixed up. So that wasn't quite 2. And so this is going to be a green. I need to mix 2 times as much yellow as I do blue. So I'm going to do 4 yellow and 2 blue. There's 3, 4, and I'll give it another little bit since that second one wasn't full. So now I'm going to mix in my blue with this. I'm going to do 2 blue. Okay, so that's going to be our green. Now the next color I need to mix up is our violet, and that's going to be the blue and the red. Now with the blue, the red is 2 times stronger than the blue, so I'm going to mix 2 parts blue to 1 part red. So I'll do 4 blue and 2 red. Okay, so that's my blue. Now I'm going to mix up 2 red into this. And you guys see why I use trays on my table, because even though my table is covered with plastic, I still like to have another layer of protection on the table, because while most of the dye will come off the plastic, sometimes it just stains and it doesn't all come off. Clean my hands. So this is our violet that we've mixed up using the red mixture that we made from strongest red and mixing blue. And now we can go ahead and start dyeing our fabric. Before we do that, I want to show you how the fabric is folded. Now, if you've seen any of my previous live streams, you've seen me do this, but I still like to do it every time, just in case there's some new viewers. But I do recommend that you go back and watch the previous live streams because there's still a lot of good information in those. So now we're going to fold the fabric, and this is a basic square fold. This has been pre-folded, so let me unfold it to show you. And all of the folds, no matter whether we're doing a square fold or any of the triangle folds, they all start out the basic way. So this is approximately a fat quarter, and I have the longest side facing me or parallel to me. I'm going to take the fabric and fold it in half. And I do press my folds in, so I like nice sharp creases, like military creases on your uniform. So I press my folds in. So now I'm going to take this top layer and bring the raw edge back to the fold. Flip it over and do the same thing again. Take that raw edge and bring it back to the fold. Now for a square fold, excuse me for a minute. I needed to get a drink, sorry. Now for a square fold, I measure the width of this, which should be approximately 4.5 inches. And then the folds in this direction will be 4.5 inches. So it's just an accordion fold, just like you're doing a fan. And there we have our square fold. Now this needs to be soaked in soda ash before we can apply the dye, because the soda ash is the fixative. So I have some soda ash off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in there so it can soak while we dye the other pieces. And if you haven't watched any of my previous other streams, soda ash is sodium carbonate, and it's what allows the dyes to permanently bond to the fabric. So I have my tray with the other pieces that have already been soaked in soda ash. And I like to dye wet. You can dye dry by soaking your fabric and then letting it dry, but I like to work wet. So that's an option for you to try. So what I'm going to do today is dye 6 pieces, one of each secondary color. We're going to be using the pre-mixed colors and the colors that we just mixed. So I have my small trays here. And I'm going to attempt to use the same pieces or the same resist pieces for each piece of fabric. So just gathering everything I need before I put my gloves back on. I like these gloves, but they're a little clumsy. They're a little bulky. So I am going to start with the orange, and we're going to use just some rectangular pieces of molding. This is PVC molding I get from Lowe's, or maybe it's Home Depot, I don't remember. And I'm going to clamp them both the same way. I just want to, mainly this is an exercise in comparing the colors of the pre-mixed. And I normally clamp from center to center. I'm going to clamp off center this time. And I'll use my spring clamps that I love so much. I think I'm going to get all of the pieces clamped first before I start dyeing. That way there's less chance of cross-contamination on colors. So let's see here. How about we clamp it on the opposite corner and see what happens? I don't think it'll make a difference, but I don't know everything. Although I tell my husband and my daughter I do, so don't tell them that I said I don't. So another clamp. These are going to be the 2 orange pieces. So I'm going to set those aside and put the orange dye over by it so I won't forget what they are. Now I'll get 2 more pieces of fabric. And I'm going to use this tile here again. I really like that. So if I can find where I put the other one, it's right here in front of me. So we'll use that. But I also have the same shape that I cut out of Masonite. It's a little bigger, so we'll use both of these and see the difference between them. Okay, so last time I just placed it like that, I think. It's either like that or that. But let's place it going corner to corner for this one. And when I'm working with the Masonite, I put the smooth side against the wood. Now this Masonite is going to soak up some of this color. So if you don't want that to happen, you can cover the pieces with like saran wrap or some type of plastic wrap. Let's see if that's enough tiles or clamps. I'm going to clamp these in the opposite directions than I did the first one. And with these tiles, I try to set the smooth side up against the fabric because the back side collects dye and sometimes that will transfer. But you guys can see that I don't really sweat a lot of this stuff. So pop in the chat, let me know if you have any questions. This tile is pretty thick. It's hard to get these clamps around it a bit. Okay, so this is going to be our violet. I'll grab my trays for this. And the last one we're going to do is going to be our green. So I'll get my 1 piece of fabric and I need to get the other fabric out of the soda ash, so I'll be right back. Okay, so that's that other piece of fabric. And what are we going to do here? I'm going to use the triangle of tiles again. And let's place them a little differently than we did last week. So last week, the tile was placed right across the middle, like this. Now I'm going to place it like this. Let's see what we get. So we're going to have a large area of dyed fabric surrounded by a border of dyed fabric and some undyed fabric in the middle. Let's see if I can get these lined up. So the objective of all of this is, at one point in time, I created 50 different ways to fold and dye fold, clamp, and dye the fabric. So that's what I'm trying to recreate here. Okay, so I'm going to put these in the opposite direction. So I've got that going that way. What if I have it going this way? Oh, there's 4 ways you can do this. I don't think it's going to make a difference, but I'm all about experimenting and trying different things. So now that I have everything all clamped together, it's time to go ahead and dye these pieces. So since I have this one here, we're going to start with the green. And I'll move one out of the way. And let's start with the colors that we mixed. So this is the green that we mixed earlier from the mixing blue and the sun yellow. So it was 2 parts yellow, 1 part blue. And I don't have these in a squeeze bottle, so I'm just going to use my pipette to apply the dye. I probably have way more dye mixed up than I need. So I do this the same way I would do it if I'm using the squeeze bottle. I just apply the dye, lifting up, going in between the folds. It's actually pretty green. I'm really not much of a green person, but I think the more I work with it, the more I like it. And I'll just lift up the folds and apply the dye in between the folds. If you don't do that, you're going to get lighter color in between the folds, and that may be a look that you like. So, this is what I do. I definitely recommend people experiment and find ways that they like to dye and get the results that they want, because there is no right or wrong way. There's just a way that gets you the results that you want. We all, when we first learn, we're kind of copying the person we learn from, and that's fine, because that's the way humans learn. But eventually you get to a point where you decide, oh, I want to try this, or I want to do this a little differently, and that's all fine too. It all works. No one should get their feelings hurt if you do something different from what they taught you, especially if it gets you the results that you want. Okay, I'm just going to get into my folds a little more, and I'll call this one done. And clean my hands and set this one aside. So this is the green that we mixed up. And I think the way I'll be able to tell them is I'll just keep that cup with it. Otherwise, I don't know if I'll be able to tell them apart. I'll pour out some of this fabric or some of this dye. I'm contaminating this dye since I just poured this back in here, because what I poured in it has soda ash. So this dye won't be any good after today. Probably not a smart thing to do, but I truly only have so much space in my studio that I have to move stuff out. And if I'm not going to use it right away, then I have to, I just have to move it out. I don't have the space for it. Okay, so now this is the next one. I'm going to take this green, clean out my pipette a bit, And now we're going to use the pre-mixed green, which is in these containers. I can see this a difference. This one has a little bit more of a blue cast to it. It's called Emerald, and it's from Pro Chemical and Dye. Oh yeah, this one definitely has a blue cast to it. Now this is made up of a number of different colors. So what may happen is, and I'm contaminating this dye again. Well, that means I either need to dye something else today or I'll end up throwing it out. So the dilemma is, do I take up space with an extra bottle of dye, or do I take up space with another piece of fabric? But I was saying, this is a dye that's been pre-mixed and it's made up of a number of different colors. So what may happen as the dye starts to attach itself to the fabric, some of those colors may dye or attach faster than the others. So you may see some areas that may have a color that kind of splits out from the mixture. So it'll be interesting to see. This is one reason why I work with the squeeze bottles, because if I can dispense some into the squeeze bottles, then I'm not likely to contaminate the whole container of dye with the soda ash. So I'll just make sure I've got some dye in between all the folds the way I want. And then this one, I'll set it aside. But before I do, I'll bring the other one over so we can see what they look like next to each other while they're wet. You know, I honestly don't know if this is streaming to YouTube. From my end, it looks frozen, but I'm going to keep going. It's going to do what it wants to do anyway. So this is Emerald. And since I've already contaminated it, let's just go ahead and pour this in. So I'm only making up a half a batch of dye when I do these. Looks like I could probably only make up a quarter batch of dye and not have so much dye left. So I think I'll try that next week. So let's bring the two over. So yeah, you can definitely see that this is, there's a big difference in these colors. So I'm going to set this one aside. Clean off my tray. Don't need that pipette anymore. Switch to a fresh one. You know, this thing is telling me I have an excellent connection, but it seems to be frozen on the YouTube end. The choice is always more fabric, Virginia. I have a lot of fabric, Virginia. I have more fabric than I have time to do with it. Good to see you here. Thanks for coming. Okay, so what are we going to do next? Let's do the orange. Orange is one of my favorite colors. So we're going to start with our pre-mixed, or our orange that we mixed using sun yellow and our red mixture. So it's 3 parts yellow to 1 part red. And This is a pretty bright orange. Okay, so I'm just lifting up the layers and putting in some dye. It'd be interesting to see this pattern. So there's going to be a lot of dyed areas and very little white areas. I'll go in between the layers. I'm always afraid I'm going to knock over my container of dye and make a real big mess. So going in between those layers. If you don't go in between the layers, you're going to get more white in the middle, which are more lighter areas in the middle, which may be just fine with you. This folding process automatically creates more layers, even if you are more lighter areas, even if you do go in between the layers. So I find if I don't go in between, the areas in between are too light for my taste. Okay, so that's the orange that we mixed. I will set this aside and we can compare it to the pre-mixed orange in a little bit. So this is our second orange fabric, and I clamped it pretty much the same way, I think just maybe in an opposite corner. And this is the pre-mixed orange from Pro Chemical and Dye, and it's called Strong Orange. It looks to be a little brighter than the orange that we mixed. So Virginia, how are you doing? I hope things are well with you. So as I said, this is our pre-mixed orange from Pro Chemical and Dye, Strong Orange, and it is really a strong color. It's very bright. What's that, Halloween orange, I guess. Okay, so this one I think is almost ready to set aside, and we'll compare this orange to the other orange. Pour some of this dye back in the container. And I think what I'm going to do, instead of wasting all this dye, I'll probably off camera, because I have to go and find some more fabric or get some more fabric, is just take and do a big piece with the mixture of all of these colors in it and see how that comes out. So that's the pre-mixed orange, and this is our orange that we mixed together. And you can see the pre-mixed orange is a lot brighter. It's probably got more yellow in it than what we did here. So I'll set both of these aside. I'm going to clean my hands, clean my tray here. And the final color we're going to do is our violet, or our purple, whichever way you want to call it. I'm going to start with the color that we mixed. Get another pipette. I have another pipette here. There it's got its hiding. Okay, so we'll start with this one first. This is the larger one of those oddball shapes that I made from Masonite. And this is the color that we mixed, the violet that we mixed using our mixing blue and our combination of strongest red and mixing red. So just like before, just going to apply the dye in between the layers. And violet is one of my least favorite colors. Just a little too bright and attention grabbing for me. Now, I say that, but orange is very bright and attention grabbing too, isn't it? So this one should have a lot of white areas because this resist piece is very large and it's covering up almost all of the fabric. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that's our orange or our violet that we mixed up together. And I'll set this off to the side. And now we will take the pre-mixed violet, which is called grape. Let me clean out my pipette. So here we have our grape. And this one will have a little bit more white area than the one we just did because our resist piece isn't as large. And you see this color is a lot brighter than the color we mixed. So I think next week or tomorrow, yeah, I should be able to get these rinsed out tonight. I'll rinse these out tonight. I think I've done enough rinsing during the live streams that you guys know how to rinse out. If not, let me just briefly talk about that. So the first rinse is in ice water, and I actually do put ice in the water to get it very cold. And what that does is it stops the dye from reacting. Any dye that has not reacted to the fabric, the cold temperature basically stops it in its tracks. So that's the first rinse. The second and any other rinses after that is done in warm water or hot. So the second rinse I do as hotter water as I can get it. Sometimes I'll even heat the water up in the microwave if necessary. And any other rinses after that is done in warm water. So that second hot water rinse, it continues to stop the dye from reacting. So any dye that's still reacting after the cold water rinse, which there shouldn't be any, but just in case there is, the hot water rinse will stop it in its tracks also. And by doing it that way, you get less bleed back on the fabric because the excess dye that's not attached to the fabric gets suspended in the water and is no longer reactive. So doing the hot or the cold water first and then the hot will stop the dye from continuing to react if there's any reactive dye left. So Virginia, I know you had a question about that last week right as the stream was ending, and I don't know if I got a chance to answer it before the stream stopped. So I wanted to make sure to cover that for you today. So this is very bright compared to the one we mixed. And tomorrow we can talk about the differences and how, if you want to mix your own colors, how you can maybe compensate for that and try to get closer to the pre-mixed color. Or you can just use the pre-mixed color. Just depends on how much work you like to do. And to me, I find it a challenge to try to figure this stuff out. So I think that's it for now for that one. I'll pour this excess dye in here. And I'll bring over the first one, and we can, the difference is really noticeable. So this is the violet that we mixed, and you can see how different that is. This looks like, this is very, very dark and kind of a bluish tone. And I think this one has a little bit of more of a red tone, the pre-mixed ones. But we'll take a look at that tomorrow. So let me take my gloves off. I'll switch over to the other camera and answer any questions you have. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat for me right now. It does take a few minutes or a few seconds, not necessarily minutes, for the questions to show up on my end. So if you want to go ahead and pop those in right now. So you like the orange dye mix better? It's a little deeper. So thank you. Good. I'm glad that explanation helps for you, Virginia. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about it much last week, but it really does help since I've learned that. And I learned it from Jane Dunawall. I'm sure, Virginia, you know who Jane Dunawall is. Um, since I've been doing it that way, I have very little bleed back on my fabric. So it's something I definitely recommend that you give it a try. So as I said, tomorrow, we'll take a look at these. I will get these rinsed out before tomorrow morning so we can take a quick look at the pieces and compare the pre-mixed dyes to the ones that we mixed. And then we'll talk about the differences and how to make adjustments to the dyes that you mix if you want to get something closer to the pre-mixed dyes. So if there's no other questions, Virginia, oh yeah, I think everybody watches Jane. We've all learned something from Jane, haven't we, Virginia? So I was lucky I was able to take her 2-year mastery program. So I learned quite a bit from her. I actually, everything I know about color, I actually learned from Jane. And, you know, I've experimented a lot more with the scents, but she gave me a very good foundation on working with color. So I'm really, really happy with that because before that, I found it very intimidating to work with color. So, so I'm gonna Jane, Virginia. If there are no more questions from you, I'm gonna go ahead and end. I'll just stay here for just another second to give you a chance to pop a question in the chat if you have anything else. If not, thanks for coming, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Get a little bit of drink of water here. See you tomorrow, Virginia.